Hi, everyone. Carmen Denisco here on the Launch Network. We got some awesome shows. We've been bringing some awesome guests, giving you some great information, hopefully helping out in the long term. I got the man of the hour, my co-host for Made in America, Mr. Christopher Guerrera. Chris, what's happening, my friend?
Carmine, doing pretty good. I'm really excited about being in Florida with you the next couple of weeks and doing these live in the Sunshine State.
Dude, it's awesome. I mean, of course, you wait till winter's over after spring. I mean, but that's fine with me. It's all cool, dude. It's always warm here.
I know. We're getting some pretty good weather in Carolina now.
It's awesome.
The difference from the Northeast for me has always been like you truly get spring again, right? In the South, you have a spring, you have a fall. It's not like you go from winter to on and off hot and cold days to the summer. You truly do get spring again, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, here's it's cold. Well, when I say cold, 50 degrees cold here, and then all of a sudden it's 90.
Yeah, right. I know. And the other thing too, Carmine, I think the UIA board really doing some pretty fun stuff now. Really excited about that with the new ambassadors we're adding and a whole new plan really of action to get some good some good subscriptions and get folks following some really good advice and free information that can help them launch.
Yeah, it's really testing my organizational abilities, I must say. But yeah, they're doing a great job. We got some great people on board, and we're bringing on some awesome stuff. But let's talk about our guest coming on today, man. I've been thinking about this all day. Yesterday, it's going to be an awesome show.
Here it is. This is not just let's say a great toy it's like a genius development and design, right? My man Malone. The bunch of balloons inventor. This thing has got such a story that has to be heard by anybody inventing, right? And I just look at this and I look at the iteration. So today I figured we'd get Josh on, talk about how he developed it, the manufacturing techniques, how he marketed it, the price structure, and then what happened. That's the real key, is as this started to sell, and this is, I'm telling you, it's a genius, incredible idea. What happened after it started to sell, and that's the cricket today's story. But let's bring Josh on and introduce him, and let's start talking about what a great design and product and how it was all developed. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah. So Josh, let's start with I think about my filling up balloons. Man, where was this, right? One at a time. By the time you're done filling up 10, you had enough. You're throwing them. You want to make sure when you hit somebody, you're really putting it to work. Now you do 100 at a time. Oh my goodness! Please, where was this?
Yeah, why didn't you think of that, Chris?
I'll tell you, this is a good one. And when I show some of my friends who don't even know that it's actually on the market, they look at it and go, "Oh my God!" So yeah, think about having a hot summer day and you're doing your slides down the hill. You got balloon fights. Think about how many balloons you can make. And what is it? So tell us a little bit about it. Tell us how you developed it. It's 100 balloons. What do you do it in a minute? I don't know. Tell us all about it.
Well, let me back up a little bit and tell you how I got here.
Okay.
So I've got some graphics for you guys.
Great.
So I was in high tech. I think maybe Chris, you and I have a little bit of commonality there.
Yes.
I was at Texas Instruments. I was a process engineer working on high tech stuff. I was in the DLP division, so we were making micro mirror displays. So we would create an image made out of millions of actually moving pixels. So the LCD technology was, solid state. We actually had all these moving devices. So it was really fascinating technology. And I learned a lot. I had some inventions there. But as the company grew and the organization grew, I felt stifled and I wanted to go out on my own and pursue some ideas I had to launch products. So I left and strapped on my parachute and jumped out of the plane and became an entrepreneur. One of my first inventions was a digital paper cutter. I wanted to find a way And so for inventors, you know, it's usually there's a problem, right? And so in my case, I was aware that they were using my wife and her mom and friends and people were using these machines for cutting shapes and letters out of paper and cardstock for card making and scrapbooking, stuff like that. Well, they were using industrial tools basically. So they would use a steel rule die and it would go in this machine. You would crunch out the shape out of paper. And so if you wanted an alphabet, they had 26 of these dies, and lowercase is another 26, and punctuation, and that's just for one font and one size. And before you know it, they had these suitcases and closets full of what to me was industrial equipment. And it just struck me that that's not the right solution. And I know you have a manufacturing background, but to me, this was not a place for parallel processing, right? And that's what a die punch is. You're cutting the shape out all at once. To me, I'm thinking you only want one a lot of times. You don't want to make, many copies of one thing. You want to make one. And so I looked at a person from a serial standpoint. Can we just draw the shape? We only want one of them. And so I took the technology basically for a vinyl sign cutter and I shrunk it down and came up with a novel mechanism to fit everything there and put a battery pack and digital interface. And so that was my first adventure. And it was interesting. The product design and development part was challenging. But what surprised me was the marketing and distribution and licensing was way harder than the design.
Right.
So I spent like 6 months getting it built and prototype, and I went to a trade show and it was hugely popular. And then we just things ground to a halt. It took over a year to put together a licensing deal and bring it to market. But that was somewhat successful. It was enough to keep me going. Then I had a product, a toy product that was just a total flop. I lost lots of money, but hey, I was 1 for 2. That's pretty good as an inventor.
You mean like you just didn't launch a product and make $1 million in 6 months?
Oh boy. This was
That's the
what
myth.
I'm showing here from 2006 to 2013. It was a 7-year journey.
Yep.
And we had it was kind of break even. I wasn't really getting ahead financially, but I had this amazing experience. But my wife was like, hey, we got to send the kids to college. They need their teeth straightened. You're gonna have to go back and get a regular job. So I'm like, no, I can't. I was dreading it. And so I went back to trying to tackle this water balloon problem. So the water balloon, from what I understand, was invented in 1950. And for 63 years, we were filling them one at a time and tying them with a knot. And, as a kid, it was tedious and it didn't, it was more pain than fun. And then I was a grown up and I was too old to play with water balloons, I guess. But then I had my own kids, so I was back in the game. And by then I had, I was spending hours and tying thousands of water balloons, and that's when it hit me. There's got to be a better way to do this. And so over many summers, I would think about it, and I would start to tinker, and it hit me. I don't know if you probably recognize this feeling, but to me, you just see that there has to be a solution to this. And I learned after that, more recently, that in the Constitution, our founders provided for patents, and they said they're for securing the rights to inventors for their discoveries. And so it amazes me that they call them discoveries. So we're not creating something. This is something that the solution exists. And my task, I was determined to find it. And so I just tried all different things. Eventually, I came up with a technique that really solved the problem. So I started with a single water balloon, and I was thinking, how can I seal this without tying a knot? And so I thought, I'll get a real small O-ring and I'll put it around the neck of the balloon. Maybe that'll clinch it shut. And I actually found that I got an O-ring I thought would work. I got it around the balloon, and then I set about trying to get the water in. So I found a small tube and I inserted it through the neck of the balloon to spread open the O-ring. And at this point, I only had one balloon, one ring, and one tube. And then I went to try to hook it up to the water, and I had to come up with an adapter for that. And so I took the cap that goes on the end of a garden hose and I put a hole in it, and I proceeded to attach the tube to that hole. And that was one of the eureka moments. I looked and I thought, well, that's a very lonely tube. I could put more.
Right.
And so I didn't even test it. I went ahead and filled the end of that cap with holes. I ended up with 37 holes on like a 2.5 millimeter spacing. And I put a tube in each one, epoxied them in. I took it out back and I filled it up, and it was like magic. The water went down all the tubes all at once. They expanded when they were full. I shook it and boom, they sealed. And at that point I had, that was about 20 seconds. And so I put 3 of these together. I'm doing 100 water balloons in a minute. And I thought, I think I don't want to go back to the corporate world. I want to go put this on Kickstarter and see if I can make it happen.
Josh, you hit some key points there, right? Like everyone has ideas. And I always say, it's great. It's important to have ideas, but as you said, you have to make them a reality, right? So you started out with what you thought you could do better. And then I always find there's a paradigm shift. You started doing one, and then you realize, well, look, there's more space. I can fit more tubes. So you have that aha moment, and then now you've come up with this product that has 100 in a minute. It's just, I try to tell everyone that I work with, like, it's great to have ideas, but if you don't move on them and you can't make them a reality. And like you said, I don't want to go back to corporate America. I worked there my whole life, right? And you know what it's like. And my son always calls it, how does he put it? He's got a really nice job as a purchasing manager, but he calls it work slave. Doesn't want to be a work slave.
Yeah.
I said, well, then you need to make something a reality. You got a lot of great ideas, but until they become a reality, like you did, taking those next steps, it's just a great idea.
And I didn't cover all this, but there were several other techniques that I attempted. And one thing that I think a lot of inventors would benefit from is not settling for a solution. A lot of times you're like, you got a solution that works, but you could do better. And so I didn't stop. I mean, I was tinkering. I had this idea of using a latex tube, like surgical tubing, and I tied a knot in one end, and the other end I filled up with water, so I had like this giant sausage. And then I was looking for, a little clip I could go in and seal it off and create little sausages and then slice them into balloons. And I had another one where I was putting objects in the balloon to plug the neck, so to just get rid of the tying. And I ended up trying to come up with soft biodegradable plugs that, you could put in a balloon, and ended up using mini marshmallows at one point. And it worked. I mean, I was filling balloons without tying knots. But to me, I'm like, I didn't feel like it was done. And so I just kept looking for that optimum solution. And as an inventor, you got to do that. Or like, even if you stop, usually someone's going to come along with an improvement or better technology. So you've always got to be thinking about knocking yourself off, because you want to do it before someone else does.
That's a really, really good point. And, and it's taking it, you always have to think about the consumer too, right? About making it retail. Like, we talked to Aaron last week at Scrub Daddy, and he had this product that when he sold his company, 3M didn't want it, and he wasn't even sure what he had. But then when he realized what he had, his next comment was, I've got to make this where every family every household has one and using it. So it's taking it to that next level. And I think even for me, speaking for me, I always try to find a way when I do new products that it's manufacturable, it's foolproof. So when a consumer gets it, it's ready to go. There are no things they have to do. It's an easy process to use, much like you did with the bunch of balloons. I mean, you attach this now really to a garden hose, right? And you pop it when it's ready to go, and it seals itself. And you got 100 balloons ready to go.
Yeah, and even that was really interesting, because a lot of people were asking, well, what do you do after you use it? You got to put the balloons back on, and it wasn't intuitive necessarily. To me, it was. I was like, I don't want to replace tying a balloon with having to install these O-rings. And so that was a big part of the challenge. Was, in fact, that became, I didn't have a solution yet. when I built my first prototype, it probably took me 2 hours, right? So I'm always thinking, how am I going to scale this? And if it takes, I came up with this tool in order to build my prototypes and a technique for, you have to expand this elastic ring by like 700%, which is almost the elastic limit. And then you've got to get it over the balloon and then let it shrink back down. And then there was material science challenges with creep and permanent set of elastomers. And but I had it worked out to where the best I thought I could do manually was going to take 30 minutes to make a pack of 100 water balloons. And I'm thinking, this has got to be a $10 product. And so I'm doing the math, like $10 product, that means you got to produce it for $2 to $3. Where does that half an hour labor go in? Just sending this offshore isn't going to solve the problem. And that's where things got really interesting, because after I put it on Kickstarter and it blew up, there was a lot of interest from manufacturers and retailers, and we're like, okay, well, how are we going to make millions of these, and how are we going to hit that price point? And so labor wasn't going to solve it. So I knew I needed an automated solution. And so thinking through the mechanisms and the techniques and the capital that was going to take to build this automation. And so all those things are part of the problem that I felt as an inventor. Most inventors don't go that far. And I think there's a lot of innovation that happens when you think about scaling and economies, and what, if this thing costs $25, I'm going to sell a certain number, but if it costs $6, that's a whole new world. So
Right.
Working through those issues was part of what I viewed as my job as an inventor and entrepreneur.
Yeah. So Josh, let's talk about that for a second. So when you got this on Kickstarter, so you had a product that you proof of concept, right? You had a product you felt good about. You put it on Kickstarter, and I know the story. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that story. But it really did blow up. You were on NBC Today. It took off. So in your mind, what happened next? Because I'm guessing you didn't have this high volume automation where everybody wanted one now, and you couldn't deliver type of scenario. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I had a phased plan. I think a lot of Kickstarter projects don't have a plan. The coolest cooler was running at the same time as my Kickstarter, and they raised like $13 million. But they totally flopped because they had no way to build this thing and deliver it. They spent all their $13 million and then some. So for me, I didn't just have a prototype. I had a pilot line, and it's just in me. I was in manufacturing. I felt like I want to take responsibility for identifying and addressing these problems early, so they're not surprises later. So I had a setup where I was able to manufacture my Kickstarter product. So I already had a plan to produce 2,000 packs because I wanted to deliver my early backers that summer. I didn't want them getting it in the middle of the winter.
Right.
So I had a pilot line with the injection molding, the assembly equipment, the procedures, where I knew I could crank out 2,000 packs. And then I knew I could scale that to a certain point. And so eventually we sold like 100,000 packs on Kickstarter, and then another 100,000 on e-commerce after that. And we were able to just scale the manual process, the 30-minute process. That's the other thing. We looked at, I built in that cost. And so at Kickstarter, we asked for $15 of support in exchange for one pack of balloons. So you can see I built in some margin. Didn't go out at $10 because I'd have been really cutting it close with shipping. And in fact, we ended up, we had to rework a huge batch of material because the first set of O-rings failed on us. Well, I had to eat all that cost of that materials, and I had enough to where I was able to deliver the 200,000 packs using my phase one process. And in parallel, we were working on the high volume process because by then we had demand for millions of packs. And so we set about building the machinery to basically take the techniques and material science and build that into an automated process.
So at that point, you already had in mind what you wanted to sell it, right? You figured it had to be below $10, which I think is a great price point. Now you've had quite a bit of marketing, right? You didn't physically go out and spend these TV campaigns, but you did a Kickstarter and you got a lot of press, a lot of good press, like, we talked about NBC and Today, and so you got some really good press, right? Now what happens? Now you're selling. So let's talk about that. You start selling a lot. What happens?
So it like you said, it went viral, and it was on, like the blogs and the web initially, and then it went on TV, and I was on the Today Show, and it was just unbelievable. Like, it was way beyond what I imagined would happen. I know you've been on one of these shows.
Yeah.
Actually, Good Morning America actually covered this first, but they did, and they jumped right on it. But then Today Show thought, we'll get the inventor out and do a live show. So that was good.
That's the best way to do it. I always find, like, if I'm going on the show versus me now talking about my product, you connect better. So that was another smart move on NBC to do that.
Yeah, it was great. It really worked well. I partnered with Zuru. It's a family-owned toy company. They're originally from New Zealand, but they do a lot of, in this industry. It's just an economic reality that most of this product has to be produced in China and Asia, and so they have, but they're different. They don't rely on cheap labor, right? They rely on, like, high-powered, high-caliber engineering. So I had a plan with Kickstarter, was going to kickstart, and then I had to go raise like $10 million, and it was going to take me 3 to 5 years to build this factory that was required. I went and worked with Zuru, and they had a plan. They're like, no, we know how to automate, and they showed me some of their projects, and we built a factory almost fully automated in 6 months.
Wow. Hey, Josh, not to cut you off real quick. And this is amazing how this happened, because I would be overwhelmed that all these things were happening at the same time. Did Zuru approach you, or did you said, man, I need help, and you went out looking for somebody to help you?
Great question. So Kickstarter flipped the tables once, and that's a great thing about crowdfunding, and crowdfunding especially, is once they saw that there was widespread demand for the product, I kind of checked some boxes off. They're like, yep, we don't need it. This product's going to sell. So people started coming to me. I heard from a lot of retailers, a lot of toy companies. Zuru, I remember they hit me up on I think the second day. Wow. And I lost track of it. Things were so crazy. I didn't follow it. Plus, I was talking to Hasbro. It's like, who's Zuru? 2 days later, I guess they emailed back, and it was like the third try. And I finally looked at who this was and what they had to offer, and we had a call, and they explained their automation strategy. And every other toy company I talked to would say, oh yeah, we're going to make this. We're going to sell billions of them or millions of them. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do about the manufacturing challenges? Oh, well, we've got a factory in China. I'm like, okay, well, I've got that. What else you got? Yeah. Well, we've got a guy in China who can manage the factory and make your product. Like, yeah, but what about the labor and the quality and all this? And that was it. And Zuru came and said, well, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to automate it, and they explained the technology. I actually went out and met with them 3 days after we finally touched base. And by the time I arrived, they had already designed the machinery that was going to build this together. And it wasn't complete design, but it was like they had already identified the key challenges that I was aware of and had a solid engineering plan to solve them. Eventually, we built this machine. It's this big carousel, and you feed parts in. So there's tubes that go in one bin. There's balloons that go in another bin, a vibrating bowl. And then the O-ring, that turned out really interesting. We were using O-rings and compression molded O-rings and just vibrating them into the feeder.
Wow.
We ended up with, you can see in the graphic, we ended up using latex tubing, And we fed the tubing into the machine and sliced it in real time to create the elastic ring. And then there's this equipment that just rotates around and picks up parts and inserts them, couples them together, and it gets to the end and a robotic arm picks it off and places it on this conveyor belt. And it's like a dream. Like my invention, and early on it was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is just cranking down this factory line as almost as far as you can see. It was unbelievable. We were making tens of thousands of these a day. We've now made over 50 million packs of water balloons. Over 5 billion balloons have been produced using my invention. And this is key. I mean, the manufacture, in fact, that's the reason I'm here today, which if we're going to talk a little bit about the dark side of knockoffs and patents and all that, because we were able to produce this product at a high quality, at a competitive price, we were able to survive the copycats.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, Josh,
have been able to do.
I'll tell you, you hit on a key point. Obviously, manufacturing is my sweet spot, right? And that's photo here. I mean, it looks amazing, like a clean, lean, really efficient plant. But you made a decision. You didn't just someone, it's easy to be flattered and someone offering you to partner up, and then you get excited and you do the deal, which ends up completely failing. You really did your due diligence.
One of them offered me $1 million.
Yeah, there you go. See, I mean, anybody, right? That's what I tell you before, and we'll talk about the back end of the story. But like, you have weathered the storm in more ways than one. I mean, making that decision early on that you're going to go with the right company, being flattered. I hear people say, "I got a licensing agreement." Okay, have you made any money? No, this person now can't produce it. So now you're dead before you even started. Here you are doing all this press, getting a lot of attention, and you still were asking all the right questions to make sure you partner with the right group. And manufacturing, you said it, is 100% key to launching a successful product, especially the one you have.
It was my baby. I wasn't gonna just drop it off at the orphanage. I was gonna
Right.
raise it.
Hey, Josh, real quick. So this is happening so fast. It must be like, for me, it'd be overwhelming. You go to this place, it's like Willy Wonka factory to make your product. Are you just like sitting back waiting for the hammer to drop? Like, what's going to happen?
Am I dreaming?
It was too good to be true. Yeah. And it did. Before we even got to market,
that's not your product.
Nope.
This is the dark side. Here's a guy that's worked his whole life, made something, right? Fought it to the end, got it in the market, sold 100 million balloons, and now you've got somebody taking all of the work he did and copied it. So I'll let you go with that, Josh.
Well, we were working on setting up our factory and preparing to fill our orders for the next summer. And so we did our Kickstarter deliveries, and then we went and started to scale up and build this equipment line. And then my wife gets a text from her friend. She says, "I saw a copy of Josh's invention on TV." And I assured her that wasn't possible. It's probably some other balloon product. And she said, no, it's yours. And so I looked it up, and it was a dead-on copy of my invention. Mine was green, and the one on TV was blue.
So Josh, just for a moment, tell us what you felt, right? You worked your whole life, you've got this thing launched, you got all this attention, you partner with somebody, and now a friend tells you have somebody ripping you off, basically. What was your emotional state at that moment?
I was stunned. I was stunned at the scale and the brazenness and the speed. So I expected Chinese knockoffs on Amazon and eBay. Mm-hmm. Sure. What got me was this was all over TV, and this was an American company. And I start looking into who's behind this, and I find out that this is their business model. And at that point, so at first I was shocked and bewildered. And then as I found out who was behind it, I was very afraid for my future and for all my work.
Classic though, right? Classic. The little guy does all the work. The big guy steals it. Classic. But yours took a different
It's
turn.
good business, right? Because most inventors and entrepreneurs are going to fail, like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. We do all the R&D, all the research, the trials, you launch a product in a big box and it doesn't sell through, and that's still a failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these guys just sit back and they don't have to worry about all that expense and risk. They just wait for a successful product, and then there's no risk, no cost.
Right.
Company called Telebrands was behind this. They created the as seen on TV industry, or they created the logo. I don't know if they were early on. Books have been written about these guys. They started in the 80s with knocking off Sony Walkmans, and then Thigh Master. Suzanne Summers was selling Thigh Master. They're selling Thigh Shaper. Every hot selling product, they've got a copy. So you go to the checkout, aisle at Big Box, and you see all this as seen on TV, the spin mop and the pocket hose and the pet egg, and most of those are knockoffs. That's their business model. This is something they've been very successful at, made billions of dollars copying products. I remember at the time the pocket hose was a hot item, and I went to the store, I saw the inventor's product, the X hose, $19.99, and next to it's the pocket hose for $9.99. It lasts 3 uses, but they sold millions of those and put the inventor out of business because he couldn't compete.
It's funny. I know Michael. I know you do too. And the first time I met him, I said, "Hey, Brandy's got something she wants to tell you. The product is horrible. It doesn't work." He said, "Chris, trust me, it's not my product. It's all the ripoffs, all the knockoffs." And then he went into explaining the lawsuits he had, and then he sent me a couple. I'll tell you what, I hooked those things up. I kept them outside, literally in New England, in the ice and the snow for 2 years, and didn't have one problem with it. So clearly, junk versus quality. In that case,
Hey,
but Josh, most people, when someone rips them off like that, a big company, right? Like you said, fear sets in. You have no chance. They have big pockets, deep pockets. So what I admire about you so much, amongst other things, is that you felt that passion, that you were not going to back down. You were going to fight this to the end, and you did. And that's what I think is very different than many people. Like, everyone wants to talk a good game. You went through it. You did it. You fought it. So let's hear about that a little bit.
Well, I was very blessed. I say that it was miraculous that I was able to survive against these guys. They've been in over 100 lawsuits over intellectual property rights, and they had never lost. They had never even been to trial. And so that's the really dark side of intellectual property and patents, is they don't work the way we were taught and the way we believe. It really comes down to all out scorched earth litigation. These cases over disputes over patent rights, they take up to 10 years, sometimes more. I know a woman who's a woman entrepreneur in the printing industry, transfer printing industry. She's been in litigation over 15 years now against these big corporations, and it costs tens of millions of dollars. And so their attitude is, if you can't beat us in court, then we can steal your technology, and it's very effective.
And like you said, they've been pretty successful. They haven't lost, right? So it's a perfect business model until they met you. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, we went to court. There's no patent police. So if you copy a DVD or stream a video, or you violate a copyright, there can be criminal penalties. The FBI gets involved, but not with patents. And patents, you got to go to court, and we did in a big way. And so we had so many, and so what they do is they file all these frivolous motions and appeals, and they just assault you with their attorneys and their arguments. And so in our case, kind of a classic, a classic tactic is, well, actually, normally you would think if someone accuses you of infringing their patent, they would argue that their technology is different and so they don't infringe. Well, that wasn't going to fly. So they went to plan B, which is to attack the patent itself. And so they can argue that the patent office made a mistake and you don't deserve your patent, so they're not guilty. And so, and they filed like dozens of arguments, and most of them were frivolous. But attacking the patent was a key tactic for them. So they argued in one case that no one knows when a balloon is substantially filled with water, and so my patent was too vague, and so they're not guilty. Another argument they pushed was it's obvious. You just combine a garden sprinkler with some plumbing fittings and like the surgical dietary balloon. You put those together, and that's what Josh did. It's obvious. And they're allowed to make these arguments. They hire MIT professors and pay them tens of thousands of dollars to lie through their teeth. And they go before the judges, and usually this works. We were able to, fortunately, Zuru was a great partner, and we hit them hard and fast, and we spent millions of dollars, and they lost on that argument, and the judge told them they had to stop. But that was just the first case. I remember at the moment I got the news, I called my wife, and I couldn't believe it. I said, we won. We beat Telebrands. And I was so wrong. They came out 3 weeks later with another copy. They just made a slight tweak, and we're able to start the whole process over again. So we're having to hire more attorneys and experts, and we end up in this massive legal war. And so you hear about the patent litigation like Samsung and Apple and Microsoft and these giant multinational corporations that, they don't have a problem spending $50 million in court. They've got billions or trillions. It's the same system. This exact same system is used by small businesses, and it doesn't work. We were very fortunate. We sold hundreds of millions of dollars globally. We've done over $500 million now in selling a bunch of balloons. And so we were able to fund this massive legal war and keep these guys from swamping us. And then key takeaway, that wasn't enough. So in 2011, Congress passed the America Invents Act, and it was terrible for inventors. Like so many of these bills, it does the opposite of what they say. The Trojan horse in that legislation was the Patent Trial and Appeal Board. So now, the Patent Office for over 2 centuries would support inventors. You have to go through and apply. There's a rigorous examination. You have to pay these fees. They do prior art search, and they usually reject your patent. And then if you get through it after 2 or 3 years, they give you a patent, and it's approved. Under this new law, the Patent Office invalidates patents also. And so when a big corporation like Telebrands or Microsoft or Google or Apple, they want to use your technology, they just go to the Patent Office and pay a fee, and they say they made a mistake. And so now there's 250 administrative patent judges, and their job is to invalidate patents. And so what they do is they've been taught, Congress has said, and big tech came in and set up the system and said, patents aren't good. Patents inhibit innovation. Inventors, they're patent trolls. And so you need to get rid of these bad patents. And so they've now reviewed 3,000 patents, and they invalidated 84% of them. And so that's the American Invents Act. Telebrands went to the PTAB, and where they lost in a real court in front of a real judge, eventually a real jury, they were able to tell these guys the same thing. No one knows when a balloon is filled with water. It's obvious, and they took back my patent after all that.
Wow, it's amazing.
I mean, think about the roller coaster ride here. I mean, and let's just talk about that for a second. So you go from finding out someone stole your idea and essentially infringed on your patent, to winning, becoming incredibly excited. We won. Can't believe it. To now going through all of the legal issues again, bringing you back to where you are now. What kind of, most people would not have even survived that. They would never gone down that road. I think about it myself. I've been in some pretty heavy duty legal confrontations with Ford Motor Company and consumers, and the intensity is unbearable, right? When you think about some of the stress levels. So I admire you for that, for one, but man, the credibility you have for me to even think about that longevity and the path you took is incredible. So talk about that a little bit. Because again, it's not for the weak. It's not for everyone. Not everybody. I don't think anyone in their right mind would take on somebody that strong. But with you believing in your product and seeing it and the passion, it has a great ending. But talk about that a little bit.
Well, it was a perfect storm. Most inventions aren't this valuable, and so you're going to spend 10 or 20 million dollars, give it to the attorneys. So that's the thing, is a perfect storm. The patent, the technology was so valuable, and we were able to sell a lot of units. They were selling a lot of units, and then and also for me, it was like, I'm never going to have another chance at this. I mean, I've had other inventions, but this one is, this is the one I gotta make sure it pays. And so I ended up heavily involved in the legal world. I quit inventing. I was fortunate Zuru was doing a great job with production. So I was able to just, I was reading briefs, I was writing briefs, I was telling the attorneys, hey, isn't this unconstitutional? How can you have an Article 3 judge say one thing, and then the executive branch comes in and overrules him? Isn't that separation of powers? What about the Seventh Amendment? And it was interesting that we went through this period where, my passion and my belief in justice, and to some extent my intuition, was pushing the envelope with the legal system. So the patent system has gotten so distorted that I was able to inject kind of a fresh view and say, wait a minute, how can this be? And before you know it, these things are going to the Supreme Court. And so I had to get heavily involved and because it was really the only game I had. Like, I had put everything I had into this. If they take it away, I don't really have another alternative. And so I went full in.
And I think about you now, right? You're now the resident expert. Like, who would have thought that, right? You come up with this great invention, you get it to market, you got all kinds of attention, people love it. And now you find yourself, talk about the timeline, right? 5 years later, you're in a legal battle, and now you become the expert in the field.
Yeah. Well, we had this roller coaster. I thought we'd won, and then the patent office was stabbing me in the back, and it just became clear that our legal system was utterly broken, and that the law wasn't working. The procedures had failed. I at this point was desperate. I went to Washington, and and called attention to what was going on. I was desperate. I took my family and joined some other inventors. That's when I met US Inventor.
Mm-hmm.
US Inventor is the leading, I'd say probably only voice for inventors in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
I know the UIA works closely with us on things, but UIA is an educational mission. US Inventor is policy advocacy. And so we're a C4. That's 501c4, for instance. And they helped me, and they explained how Congress works, the committees, and then they helped me at the patent office. And this is not something that I was proud of. It wasn't a tactic. It was actual desperation. The patent office was taking back my patents, and these guys were getting away with it, and it was looking really dark. And so we went and we demonstrated, and we called attention to it. We burned our patents. What else can we do?
Well, I can imagine the anger, right? At this point, you had to be beyond frustrated to a point where now you're angry because nobody's listening to what's supposed to be a right to and a privilege to be protected. Now it's no longer the case.
I couldn't believe it, and it's still going on. The patent office is working in concert with these huge corporations, the revolving door, and these bureaucrats that are not judges. They're pretend judges, and they're making stuff up, and they don't know what they're talking about. You know, they said no one knows when a balloon is filled with water. Come on.
That's incredible.
The judges, the real judges at the Court of Appeals actually laughed at their attorney when they made those arguments. But at the PTAB, this makes sense to them. So anyway, it's just total chaos. What happened after this was I didn't know what would happen, but we actually got a new director at the patent office. And then, you know, a few weeks later, I won an appeal where the patent office had invalidated my patent. I got it back. This administrative judge who was wrecking everything, they demoted him and put a new judge on my case. And this is not, I can't believe this is how America works. I mean, this is not what I thought. But what happened was, meanwhile, we kept paying the bills. $75,000 every week, dozens of attorneys, thousands of pages of filings. And so between paying these bills and this PR campaign, I found that's how I got the leg up on Telebrands. It's not because I had a great invention and a great patent attorney. It's because I had incredible wealth through the partnership with Zuru and the sales, and I had serious political influence. And turns out that's what the big corporations have been doing. They took our patent system that was tried and true and reliable for 200 years, and they came to Washington and they came to the patent office and they stole it through power and influence and money. And I, you know, serendipitously discovered that formula. And so Telebrands is like, oh crap, this isn't working. For the first time in our history, he's not going away. The patents are coming back to life. He's got these zombie patents that we can't get away from. They were spending tens of millions of dollars. They hired the biggest law firms in the world to try to crush me, and it was failing.
And I'm guessing, Josh, at some point, they probably tried to settle with you to get you out of the picture, because now you're like that black gnat, that little fly that's buzzing around your head, and you can't get rid of them, right? They can't get rid of you.
No, they made us some lowball offers. They didn't come to grips with the truth until we had a final judgment that they owed us $31 million. So we were able to get a jury to decide in our favor, and they awarded us $12 million. And then a year and a half later, we were still arguing in court, and the judge doubled it for willfulness. And then he tacked on attorney's fees. And so in March of 2019, they had a $31 million bill to pay. And it turns out that was the Goldilocks number. They had they owed us a little less, they would have kept fighting, appealed.
Amazing.
Had they owed us a little more, they probably would have gone bankrupt, relaunched. You know, you see Bulbhead everywhere now. That was their plan B, was just run away. But then, so they had to come up with a bond. So I don't know if you might want to edit this out later. But AJ Kabani was going to have to go sell one of his vacation houses or his one of his private planes, because he had to deposit $31 million worth of court. And so now he's like, do I want to dig my hole any deeper and fight this guy for another 10 years? I'm going to pay the attorneys $50 million just to try to get away with stealing this invention. And so they finally saw the light, and they said, we better settle. Wow. Of course, then they want to vacate the judgment and have a confidential settlement. I'm like, no, you pushed it this far. you're paying the 31 million, and you're gonna have to pay us for these other cases because they did this over and over again.
Hey.
And so that's on the record. It's public. They didn't get away with it this one time, but it's not. Yeah, I mean, I stuck it out, and yeah, I was reading briefs and writing briefs till midnight every night for several years, and but you know, the support of U.S. Inventor, you know, God did some miracles, and we came out the other side, and I want to use it for good now, and hopefully, I mean, this shouldn't be the way it shouldn't take this.
I agree.
It's much easier and simpler for inventors to succeed.
Hey, Josh, I know we only got a couple minutes left. As an inventor, as all inventors that are listening in, one, how should they get involved? And two, where can they go to learn more about your story and also how to protect themselves? Is there a place right now? I know you guys are doing that, but it's amazing, the story.
Yeah. So as I said, U.S. Inventor, some inventors there helped me out, and now I've joined. I'm a full-time volunteer supporting U.S. Inventor to give inventors a voice. And so, again, we cooperate with all the inventor clubs and organizations because we want inventors to succeed, but they need help from the government to stick to the deal. And if you do all the work and you get that patent, you need to be able to rely on it. So usinventor.org, you can join, and we need you to join. So this is a grassroots movement. So we can't compete with their high-powered lobbyists and campaign contributions, but we can compete by getting educated and meeting with congressmen and senators in each of the 50 states. And that's what we're doing. So we're building a grassroots movement at US Inventor to educate and really empower and give inventors a voice. And there's 325,000 inventors, patented inventors who are part of a small business. And so we're growing the movement. We want all 300,000 inventors who are involved in small businesses to be a member. And so we're well on our way.
That's awesome.
Well, I tell you, Carmine, this has a making. I mean, you know, what a story when you think about it. I've heard it a couple of times now, right? And every time Josh talks about it, I learn something new. Think about, I mean, what we started out with in the early stage of this conversation, right? Finally got noticed, great invention. The people in the market love it. He's getting national media attention, and somebody rips him off.
Yeah.
And then you go through, like he said, a dark side. I mean, this really does have the makings of a movie, honestly, right? This is something that everybody can relate to, whether you have an invention or not. It's the little guy against the big guy, and the little guy did all the work, right? What a story, Josh! I'll tell you.
You know,
it gets better.
There is a movie.
Yeah.
So you know, Invalidated is available on Amazon, and it does a good job explaining what's going on. It would be very helpful for inventors to go into this eyes wide open. So check out Invalidated, the shredding of the U.S. patent system.
All right. Well,
Awesome.
Josh, I can't thank you enough. I always enjoy talking to you. You know, we met. It's funny how we met. We met at Make 48, probably almost 7 years ago or so. But I really appreciate you personally, and I know I tell you this all the time when I see you, but I mean it. Like for somebody to have that drive and that passion to not give up and not fold up, boy, I'm a competitive guy, right? And I look at what you did, and I'm like thoroughly impressed. Like really saying to myself, that's a journey that is not for the weak, and it's not even a journey for the strong when you think about it. And what you went through. So I commend remarks from me. I really, really appreciate you. And I know you do a lot for the community. You do a lot for inventors. And I personally want to thank you.
Yeah. Same here.
Well, yeah, thank you for partnering with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. So great, Josh. I mean, not only have what you've done, but you and US Inventor, the ripple effects going forward, really saving a lot of people, and it's just going to get better. I have the feeling you guys aren't going to give up, so it's just awesome. So for all you listeners out there, go on out, see what's happening. US Inventors, join the UAA, join US Inventors, do what you can, make sure that you're not only protecting yourself, but you're doing the right thing. We thank Josh Malone for coming on today. Hopefully we'll have him back on. I mean, we could have probably had a 3-hour segment here with so much information to pass along, and that would have been pretty awesome. But for Mr. Christopher Guerrero, for myself, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Made in America. You all take care.